This session will focus on the science, monitoring, and restoration efforts, helping us better understand water quality and nutrient pollution in Biscayne Bay. So we are pleased to begin with a presentation titled Spatiotemporal Patterns of Water Quality in Biscayne Bay, a Subtropical Estuary, presented by Edward Castaneda.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the contribution of my co-authors to this research. Also, the entire group for the restoration and enhancement section at DERM, and the funding sources, the MPDS program, and the Miami-Dade County Stormwater Utility fee programs. Estuaries, as you know, are transitional systems at the interface between continents and oceans. They are significant components along the land-ocean continuum, and they provide significant ecosystem services. Also, we know that they are biological hotspots, and also they play a significant role in the carbon and nutrient content across this continuum. And also, blue carbon ecosystems are the major dominant feature in the coastal zone, which they make or represent a significant link between the ocean systems and the terrestrial systems. Despite these characteristics, at the global level, we know that estuaries, they are facing significant impact, pressure, and vulnerability because the combination of different factors, including human activities, that they increase in the coastal zone. Also, we have the urban expansion and also the cascade of events that actually they have significant impacts in the ecosystems, and the combination of climate change and sea level rise. So the interaction of all these factors influence the vulnerability of these coastal systems. One example that we have here in South Florida is Biscayne Bay. As we know, this is an urban estuary. It's adjacent to the Miami metropolitan area, so we have a lot of human influence. It's an oligotrophic system, subtropical system, and they provide a lot of ecosystem services. As we know, they have an economic output of $64 billion that represents approximately 20% of the Miami-Dade County economy. So significant influence. However, during the past century, hydrological modifications in the upper watershed had influenced the water flow delivery into the systems relative to the previous historical flows that we have. And then this is the results of urban expansion, population growth, and also agricultural activities. And all these factors basically an influence to increase the nutrient loading, declining water quality conditions, and also significant habitat loss, including mangroves and seagrasses. So in addition to that, because of the extensive modifications that we have in land use management, also we have a strong gradient from the north to the south. So the north part of the bay basically is heavily populated, as we know, because it encompasses the entire Miami, most of the Miami. But this comes at expenses of significant mangrove loss and degradation since 1900. And I put in here some pictures on mangroves, how they look like in the 1900s. Really tall mangroves, developed mangroves. This is Miami Beach, believe it or not. This is Lagos Island, and then this is what it looks right now, heavily urbanized. And then the south, basically, which is this part, we have less population and is influenced by agricultural fields. And the central part of the bay, basically, we have is a transitional zone between the heavily urbanized and the agricultural lands. And here you see the pie. How mangroves right now, they contribute, the distribution is basically 0.5, so we don't have mangroves right there. And then in the south, we have about 6%. So taking into account these contexts about human impacts and urban ecosystems, so the question that we want to address is what is the spatial variation and distribution patterns of water quality variables across the regions of Biscayne Bay? How does seasonality influence the magnitude and rate of change of these water qualities along the bay? And what is the relative influence of canal mounts on water quality? And how does it change across the seasons along the bay? So to answer these questions, we focus in 7 nutrient criteria regions that are well established in the bay, as you've been hearing this morning. The original bay segmentation was adopted by Henry Briceño and collaborators in 2013. So we adopted this approach to assess our spatial and temporal patterns in water quality. We have a total of 54 stations that you see right there in yellow dots across all the regions, and that includes 10 canals As you see, canals here from Ash Creek and Biscayne Canal all the way to Princeton and Maury Canal. So in terms of data collection, we have 5 years, basically starting from January 2021 to December 2024. This is part again of our Biscayne Bay Water Quality Monitoring Program. It's a program that is really comprehensive, that is started running since 1979. And we have a total of 137 stations that include the stations that we have in the bay, plus all the stations along the canals and the watershed. So for today, we focus in variables collected at the mid-water column, including salinity, chlorophyll, total nitrogen, and total phosphorus. And basically, data collection and curation follow standard protocols. So some of the results. So here are all the panels you're going to see in the x-axis of all the nutrient criteria regions from the north to the south. In terms of salinity, basically we have a strong seasonality. We have higher salinity during the dry season across all the regions that you see right there by the asterisk, significant difference. And the higher salinity, basically we observe that in the central offshore, which is this blue region right here, which is directly connected with the Atlantic Ocean, so that makes sense, the higher salinity. In terms of chlorophyll, we know that chlorophyll can be used as an indicator of eutrophication. You know, it's basically a proxy of phytoplankton biomass. So for water quality, it's a good metric. And what we see here is basically, again, we have a strong seasonality, higher concentrations in the wet season across all the regions. And notice that I had this line right here, which is the nutrient criteria standards. And to be conservative, basically, I took the average of all those, and this is what it represents right here. But we know that this nutrient criteria is higher, for instance, in the north part of the bay, about 1.5 micrograms per liter. So you see basically that these two regions in the north and the regions in the north central inshore and the south, which is this one, so that's when we observe the higher chlorophyll concentrations. In terms of the time series analysis, basically we pulled the data by regions, the north, the central, and the south, and then we found significant difference in chlorophyll in the central and in the south bay. In the north, the concentrations are similar throughout these years, but the concentrations right here are 3 times higher to what we see basically in the central and in the south part of the bay. In terms of nutrients, total nitrogen, we have, again, a strong seasonality, higher concentrations here in the south central inshore, which is the light blue right here. And this zone is basically highly influenced by 3 canals, the Black Creek, the Princeton Canal, and the Maury Canal, that they deliver a lot of water from the agricultural lands. And again, most of the regions right here, the nutrient criteria standard is about 23, so most of the region are above of that. So we have a lot of nitrogen coming into the system. In terms of phosphorus, again, we have a strong seasonality, the similar trends that we observe in chlorophyll, and that gives us an indication that phosphorus basically is the main driver of the chlorophyll patterns that we have here in the bay. Most of the regions are below the nutrient criteria of 0.26. So when we put together these two, we can use the ecological stoichiometry, or basically the nutrient ratios, that give us an indication of environmental change. And here you can see that we have a strong gradient from the north with low NP ratios and high NP ratios in the south part of the bay. We use the Redfield ratio, as most of us we know, about 16. So the higher NP ratios that we observe in the south part of the bay right here basically resemble the strong phosphorus limitation conditions. So the patterns that we see right here basically is the result that we have in the north part of the bay. We have the concentrations of phosphorus are 2 times higher relative to what we see in the south, whereas in the south, the concentrations of nitrogen are 2 times higher relative to what we see in the north. So this differential in nutrients defines the patterns that we see right here in NP. Now the canals. So the canals, they have similar patterns. Here we have all the canals that I mentioned before from the north all the way to the south. And in the south, we see that the main canals, Black Creek, Princeton, and Maury, they have or contribute with the highest concentrations of nitrogen into the system. So we have values about ranging from 100 to 300. And just to give you that as a perspective, the concentrations of the lower Mississippi River is about 150 micromolar, and is one of the most eutrophic systems in the world. So here we're dealing with a lot of nitrogen coming from these canals. In terms of phosphorus, the pattern is different. So the north, is when we had the Biscayne Canal and the Little River canals. They basically account for the highest phosphorus input, about concentrations of 0.8 micromolar. The rest of the canals, they have concentrations, but lower concentrations relative to these two. So when we look at the spatial patterns, so here we have from left to right, we have salinity, chlorophyll, nitrogen, and phosphorus, dry season and wet season. And basically we can see a strong spatial pattern in the regions. So we have higher chlorophyll, which is right here, and total phosphorus right here in the North Bay. Overall, we have higher chlorophyll and nutrients in the wet season right here. One thing that is really interesting is this distant inshore to offshore gradient in nutrients. Basically, we have higher concentrations close to the coast, and then we observe a dilution factor or plant uptake, as we move to the offshore regions. And the highest concentration that we see right here in the south central inshore basically is the influence of those canals that comes from the agricultural lands. So in conclusion, first we can see that we have seasonality across the region, so higher salinity in the dry season, overall higher chlorophyll and nutrients in the wet. We see a significant increase of chlorophyll across the study period in the central and the south. The north region basically doesn't increase, but it's 3 times higher in terms of concentrations. Second, we have a chart variation from the north to the south, higher chlorophyll and TP in the north, higher total nitrogen in the south central. The entire bay is phosphorus limited, and we have a distant inshore offshore. Also, we know that canals, they play a major role right here, delivering nutrients into the bay. In the north, we have high inputs of phosphorus, whereas in the south, we have high inputs of nitrogen. And overall, we can see that spatial patterns that we have in water quality are basically shaped by the freshwater inputs through those canals. And that's it.